obviously, Prime Minister Modi was known for his economic reforms, his economic projects. What do you think is made of those in light of this narrow victory?
Well, first, he doesn't have a majority anymore with his party, so he needs coalition partners, which means he needs to develop more consensus as he goes along. I think that's good news, actually, because part of what was going on with this government was it had a lot of reforms in its first term, but the second term has been more focused on the social agenda of the government, sometimes the majoritarian agenda, while the few attempts at economic reforms, including the change in agricultural laws, were done without developing a broad consensus and essentially were withdrawn after tremendous pushback by the farmers. So this may actually mean that the reforms that are proposed going forward have more consensus and therefore more sticking power.
Do the reforms, in your opinion, are they likely to focus on some of the lower income families? Because the reports, at least of the politics of this election, were that many of the lower income voters did not back Mr. Modi.
Yeah, I think a big problem which the government hadn't paid enough attention to was growing levels of unemployment, especially amongst educated youth, a growing sense of insecurity amongst poorer households. The small and medium enterprises were also suffering. So essentially, the government was looking at the big, capital-intensive enterprises, which comprise much of the stock market. No wonder the stock market took fright after the early election results. It's come back a little bit. But really, the government has to pay more attention to these groups. And it actually may help even enhance growth over the short to medium term, because consumption hasn't been strong as these households feel anxious. A revival in consumption could help the economy grow faster.
One of the things that investors have paid attention to is inflation in India, which certainly still has inflation, but it's more under control than it has been in the past. Is there a risk in trying to address some of the needs from the voters who did not vote for Mr. Modi, that you actually have more fiscal stimulus and you actually have more problems with inflation going forward?
Well, one of the sort of hallmarks of the Modi administration has been fiscal restraint. And I don't see why they should suddenly abandon that. Yes, there needs to be a repurposing of resources. In a recent book, Breaking the Mold, I argue that, we need more jobs in areas like services. And that requires skilling the workforce. That requires some redeployment of resources away from, for example, massive subsidies to manufacturing, to actually investing in colleges and schools, in skilling programs. But I think this is something that can be done without breaking the budget. Yes, there will be some more fiscal spending given the nature of the verdict, but I think it will help solidify the economy and actually remove household anxiety, which I think would be a big win.
What do you think this election may mean for the relationship between the central government and the individual states? Because as I understand it, in India, the states have a fair amount of power. The Prime Minister can't do certain things without the support of the states. Is that going to shift now because Mr. Modi is perceived as being somewhat less powerful?
Well, it should, but I think in the right direction. One of the problems in the Modi administration has been the appointment of governors who have stood in the way of state governments doing what they wanted to do, and not playing out as constitutional sort of impartial governors. And as a result, I think some of the states have not been able to sort of conduct the kinds of programs that they wanted. I think that should be ameliorated in a new administration where there are checks and balances on the government, and where the press is a lot more invigorated in pointing out some of these problems. I think in the last two administrations of the Modi government, the press was cowed, was unwilling to point out problems. I think with the press more alive, I think we'll get stronger debate, and hopefully debate leads to better economic as well as political policy.
And finally, Professor, speculate for us, if you will, what this means for foreign direct investment. India has been, in recent times, as we talk to investors, something of a darling, particularly as Chinese foreign direct investment has gone down. India has been a likely alternative to that. How do you think this election might affect the attractiveness of India for foreign direct investors?
Well, it's extraordinary, David. What you see is while they talk about India being a good destination for foreign direct investment, actually the numbers have been coming down over the last couple of years and are look worse than some of the other countries like Vietnam that have been recipients of foreign direct investment. What the problem is, whether there's some anxiety about the direction of the government and its policies, I don't know. But hopefully, a more democratic India, which is what this election means, will actually enthuse some of them, seeing the strength of India's democratic institutions, including its judiciary, to feel more comfortable putting long term investment, knowing that the country is not going to become politically unstable, that this is really good news for foreign direct investors. I hope that's the way they take it. I don't think government policies are going to change extraordinarily, but I think at the margin they will change or they will be forced to change in a direction that is good.